All right, thank you everybody for coming together for today's webinar. Elevate your design, AI, learning, science, and human expertise in action. We'll break that down and we'll go through some of the framing context. We want to hear from you throughout, so please keep that chat active. So we started with an exercise of having you introduce yourselves, and if you've been at any of our sessions, you know that that chat is very lively. And we do that purposefully so that this feels like a learning opportunity, a community opportunity, because the 200 or so, I lost count, about 200 people, you have so much expertise and experience to share amongst yourselves. So we're framing this as a learning experience and a conversation. So please be part of that with us today. All right. Introducing ourselves, I'm Brett Christie. I'm VP for Educational Innovation at Alchemy. I've been in that role for about 5 years now. And before that, about 25 years in higher education, starting out as a faculty member and then a faculty developer at the campus level, but also at the Cal State system level. I'm excited to be here with you today and with my colleague.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Wood. I'm Director of Operations for Design Services here at Alchemy, where I focus on leveraging learning design and AI to help refine our workflows and establish and ensure operational standards, as well as drive continuous improvement. I've been in educational content development and learning design for about 25 years now and worked in various leadership roles where I've organized workflows, mentored teams, and generally help to make sure that educational content meets the needs of institutions and students.
Awesome. Thank you. Very valued colleague. Thank you, Sarah. All right, let me dive in. So let's look at our session goals briefly, try and ground things at the outset here a little bit. So we want to differentiate ways AI can elevate versus just accelerating learning design. So we'll talk about those distinctions. Both can be done really well, but it takes a balance and it takes paying attention to, and it takes some learning, some skill, some expertise, but that can come through a process. Recognizing the stages where AI can scaffold design tasks, what it does well, and then what you're still in control of course, as the expert in nuancing things and influencing things and checking. Analyzing some examples of AI-supported research-informed design processes. So we'll go from some smaller examples to some larger scale examples today. And as always, preserving the essential human elements in design, what the instructor brings, what the designer brings, and how AI can help to bring that together and help to move that forward, but that's always anchored to your expertise. And then some strategies to thoughtfully put it into your practice. So again, some examples that we'll share with you. And we will share some links in the chat, but it's going to be more toward the end. And as always, we do record and we do make it available to you in about 2 to 4 days, hopefully going into the holiday, if not just coming out of. We'll give you the recap that'll include all the resources and all of the links. So look for that coming up real soon. So don't feel like you have to take notes unless that's a process that works for you. So first, what you told us, we had a couple of pre-poll questions, and we like to try and do this with a lot of our sessions because we want to learn from that going into the session. We also want to try and capture what's going on in your minds and your experiences and what that tells us and what that tells the group. So real quick here, let's look at the first one, is thinking about AI in course design, what excites you the most? And so the top level things, what happened most frequently across your responses, what was time savings, which is great, but also creative possibilities. So I like the balance of those two items already, and to work more efficiently. So those together are a great, powerful combination. Many of you saw AI as a helpful assistant. If you've been at some of our sessions for about 2 years or a little over, we've been calling AI the creative companion, because it can do so much to assist you and to bring out more creative opportunities as you're working together. So that brainstorming, personalization. So how can you put in more information, more of your influence on AI to get personalized responses for yourself or your students? I find that it's great at bringing in fresh ideas, suggesting things. I'll give it an idea or maybe a problem I have and ask it to help me think about creative solutions, effective solutions. And so that works really well. And you'll see some of those examples today. Okay, let's move on to the other side. So biggest hesitation about using AI in course design. So of course, accuracy, that usually stands out. So are there hallucinations built into the results or simply inaccuracies? Maybe you saw the Chicago Sun-Times article that was posted about the best summer reads. Many of those books did not exist, even when the authors existed. So you have to check for accuracy before you simply just take it at face value and run with it or post it. Ethics and academic integrity, of course. Um, you know, cheating comes up and preventing that. We won't talk about that per se today, but it is something that relates when you're using AI for course design. But retaining the human touch or possibly losing that, that was a big deal. And then how to still maintain critical thinking in your process and also in your learner's process, your student's process. Intellectual property. So how do you share what you developed versus what AI developed and how it was developed together? Makes me think of the New York Times article where instructors were asking AI to generate slides, and then they were simply posting those slides, but they hadn't really checked for accuracy. They still had obvious AI formatting in there. They hadn't shared that with students. They posted it as if it was their own. Or an instructor asking AI to give Jenny some good feedback on her submission, and that was actually appearing in the response to the student. So be thoughtful about it, and be transparent. And so those are some of the other things related to your hesitations that pop up as far as current events in my mind. And I see in the chat that, yeah, some of you have read those recent developments in the last, Chicago Sun-Times was just a couple days ago, and then New York Times article was about 7 to 10 days ago. So let's talk about reframing AI in design. So thinking about not just from speed, but actually to substance as well. So let's start off with getting your thoughts on some of the design priorities and pain points that come to mind for you. So in the chat, we have the link to the Padlet. So go ahead and go there if you want to access it through the link in chat. If you are using QR code for mobile, I'll pause here for just a moment and then I'll go over to the browser. Okay, so we'll meet there in the Padlet. And we're focusing on just options 1A and 1B, the first two columns for now. Okay, so if there are any QR folks, I'm about to jump out of the slide and go over to the browser. Okay, and let's see what's populating here. Creating an engaging and effective learning experience, absolutely. And doing so with as many of your learners in mind as possible, making that happen for as many students as possible. Great. Clarity on expectations. Absolutely. So the most effectively written course outcomes, module learning outcomes, rubrics, all of those things, so that students know exactly what's expected and they know why and where they're going with their efforts. Creating discussion forums that aren't boring. Yeah, and that'll come up. And that's, to be honest, that's where I find AI can be a really good creative companion for you. Let's see, let me get it to scroll. Here we go. Clear learning paths for students. Assignments relevant to course outcomes. And how can you do that not just for yourself, but how can you actually provide mapping? And so that will actually come up in the session today is how AI can help you with your learning outcomes if they need help, and then be able to help you create respective activities and actually show alignment and mapping that you can use for your own purposes, but can also share with your students so they can actually see a visual mind map of how all of the things connect. Student interaction, so creating more engagement, more active learning is what I'm reading there. Meaningful engaging, yes. Meeting student learning objectives, again, great. Design that does not get in the way of learning, yeah, enables. not putting up barriers, not creating gaps. Authentic assessments, yes. And again, in my experience, that's been a great thought generator about authentic assessments, working with AI to create real world scenarios, case analyses, case studies and case analyses and things like that. And so we'll quickly show you some resources we have in that area. For time purposes, I'm going to go on to the next column briefly here. Let's see, repetitive or time consuming. So calendar. So how can AI have sort of programmed reminders? How can something like learning analytics become more responsive and more personalized for students? And so that's a good promise there to take that workload off of the instructor. Writing tests and quiz questions. Thanks whoever put that in there because I'm going to cover that. Creating media, that's getting there. That's getting better and better. But again, how do you maintain your presence as you're doing so, as you're using AI to help generate that more efficiently? And how are you being transparent about that? Because students still are expecting to connect with you. Checking for accessibility, that'll come up. That's a great one I found, and I'll actually be sharing a webinar we're doing in a couple weeks related to that, related to UDL, that is. Syllabus development or syllabus analysis. Maybe if it's an existing syllabus, it can do a great analysis for you and make suggestions. It can help change the voice, all sorts of things, or create it from scratch. Okay, lots of great things. I'm not going to get to them all. Thank you. What we do is we actually take the Padlet and we do an analysis, and then we do a write-up of that and we share that back out. You'll also have ongoing access to the Padlet. So if you're looking for ideas and looking to see what other themes are popping up, then great, you can check that here as well. Some of you went over to 2A, but that's fine. We'll get to that later. Let me go back to the deck and let's keep moving forward. So let's talk about this elevate versus accelerate. What's the difference? What you want to really be able to do is just make sure that you're maintaining a balance, that you're working across acceleration and elevation. So yes, it can speed up routine tasks. You've got that efficiency. It'll save you time. It can automate processes, but it may skip things like critical thinking. It may leave out some of the things that you want most for your students in the process and their experience. So yes, you can leverage all of those things that are great about AI for speed and efficiency, but you really want to lean into how to use it to improve design quality. So what do you need to be able to do to get it to shift to that right side more? How can you get that more intentional focus on what it helps you produce or what helps you think about? How can you embed learning design principles? Some of you here today are learning designers and know those things very well. Some of you as instructors who are primarily instructors, maybe you haven't been brought up through some of the learning design principles formally, but you'll be able to relate to any of those that we talk about today. How can you use it to enhance outcomes? So not just outputs, things happening quickly, but outcomes happening at a more effective level. And then how can it help to inform you on some of your pedagogical decisions? Again, it can help you to get off of your normal track, your comfort path, or what you experienced as a student yourself, and help you to branch out and do things that are going to be more effective for you and for your students. So let's get into human judgment a little bit more. That's really the core of pedagogical quality. So as faculty and designers, you bring in so much about the context of the learning experience that you're working with, that you're building, that you're delivering. You bring in empathy, that connection with your students. You know their characteristics. You're with them in real time, in most cases, of course, depending on the modality. You can really look out for ethics. You can really pay attention to cultural awareness and any disciplinary nuances, particularly related to the level of the course and the goals of your students. The role of the human designer, you select what's relevant and appropriate. You can adjust it for student characteristics, and you can add feedback mechanisms and scaffolds for your students. And if you're not familiar with scaffolds, those are steps that are going to help certain learners be able to get to the outcome. Some are going to need less assistance. Some are going to need some scaffolds, maybe to work on something multiple times in different ways to get to the learning outcome. So in working with AI, really in those bullets there in the center, that's where you can play the role to make sure that things are done most effectively. So discussion prompts came up earlier. You can use AI for that. It can do a good job of creating some suggestions based on the topic that you're covering for your module, but you're going to want to make sure to edit those and look that they're culturally inclusive and that they're going to challenge students to actually apply the course theories. And then you might be wanting them to apply them in certain ways. And so you're going to do, again, that nudging to the results. So designing smarter. Oop, sorry, I had a technical issue come up briefly. So where AI fits and where you still lead. So AI works best when it's aligned with the phases of instructional design. Again, if you're not formally an instructional designer, some of those phases may not come out in these terms for you. ADDIE is a popular model: analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. We're not going to stick to that model today in our example. For those of you that know it, you'll see it, but just, sort of follow along, and just what you'll see for us will make sense as far as a design process when we get there. But it is mapped to these principles and stages. Don't use AI just to generate content, use it to support. So mapping outcomes to assessments, that came up several times in what you were sharing in the Padlet earlier. So once you have your outcomes the way you want them, and they're strong and they're measurable, they're specific, then you can have AI help to map your outcomes to different types of assessments and learning activities. And that can help you, but it can also, again, help your students. So that's a really effective way. That's something that can take a lot of time, and it's something where you have a lot of context in your course. And so to find all of that can be really difficult, but AI can really get to that pretty quickly. It can help structure modules with cognitive load in mind. It can help you create them and structure them with that in mind, or it can analyze your existing modules with cognitive load in mind, because you want to be able to know how much you're asking of your students, and you want to be able to tell them how much is expected of them so that they can plan accordingly. It can do a great job of creating accessible materials, or your materials, it can convert them to different types of representations. So students who might want it in text, great, it's there for them. If they want that converted to audio, to a podcast, if you want more visual enhancements for them, if you want it screen readable, if you want alt text, AI does that really well, and it knows WCAG too. It knows all of the technical properties of creating those accessibility features. It just needs a little bit of that prompting in there. Brainstorming some active learning strategies. That's where I have found that AI has been really helpful, maybe in one of the most helpful ways. Is we know that with our courses, students, no matter how highly they rate courses, they almost always want more engagement. And that's been in research I've done with thousands of courses in the Cal State system, and also what I've seen through places like Quality Matters and their research. A great course can still always use more engagement, more active learning. So I won't read the example there because I've kind of covered it in pieces along the way, but it's really empowering to see when AI can help you take your course learning outcomes and break them down into module level outcomes, which is a level of specificity or granularity that most instructors don't get to because it's very complex and time consuming. And I know when I worked with coordinating quality matters across the Cal State system, and the research Quality Matters had, is this is where instructors tended to fail or not pass their certification process for their courses. This was a most common barrier, is having module level outcomes, because it was difficult for them to conceive being able to do that and have time to do that. AI does it really effectively. So I don't know if any of you have applied that. I need to get chat back up and try and keep track of that a little bit. Great. AI is only as smart as the prompts. And so, from the get-go, people were trying ChatGPT, or anyone who's still trying it for the first time, they might put in a request or a prompt, and they're going to get something that might be just too vague or general or off topic or inaccurate. But it often comes down to the prompting. More often than not, it comes down to the prompting, what you have really put in there as the logic, how you've critically thought through what you want from it and how you instruct it to give you the output that you're desiring. So think about that as you're going forward. We'll look at a mini case here. A faculty member is using ChatGPT to create a quiz. Now, if I just go in and tell ChatGPT, I'm teaching this course and I want a quiz for this module, make it 10 questions. It's going to do it, and it's going to do it in probably 3 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds. You're going to have those 10 questions, but they're not going to be calibrated to the level that you would like or the quality that you would like. And so you have to really think about, how can I push it to create what is the best example? So let's go from that generalized, because ChatGPT, as you're working with the large language model, it's operating with a vast amount of data, obviously, and if you don't give it enough information, it's going to operate at the center of that, at the norm, and it's going to operate on some of our outdated instructional practices and traditional practices, and it's going to reflect back what we've always done. We want to do better, and we want it to do better, so we have to really push it where we want to go. So speed is great, but it's only useful if you're going in the right direction. Acceleration without reflection leads to misalignment. I think of playing Gran Turismo with a niece, and how I have no clue what I'm doing with the controller. My mind has not mapped to it. My hands have not mapped to it. I have no dexterity. I don't know the course, the driving course. I don't know the obstacles. I don't know the other drivers and what they might do. And so I'm just all over the place. And just when I think I have it and I hit the accelerator, I'm out of control. So this can happen if you just go through things and try to do it too quickly. Things can spin off. So using what I'm calling learning aligned prompting, I really don't like the term prompt engineering. It's being used less, which I like, but prompt engineering to me is just this overbearing, intimidating term that was used at the outset. And it made it feel like AI was only for the in crowd, the computer science and other technical folks, when really it's about thinking of the output and how you can make learning aligned prompting happen. And so here's a model that we'll use here. So let's think of the quiz example. So I'll read this, and I don't often read blocks of text like this, but using sound pedagogical judgment assists me in developing a 10-question knowledge check quiz for the module topic you can insert with the module learning outcomes, and you can put in your, let's say, 3 module level learning outcomes there. It is critical to ensure that the questions are aligned to the above outcomes, appropriate for, and you can put in the characteristics or level of your learner, clear and free of unnecessary complexity and ambiguity, accessible to diverse learners, well constructed with 1 correct option and 3 plausible distractors. And what that means is, if somebody knows the answer, if they're meeting the outcome, they'll be able to pick the correct answer. The others aren't trying to trick them. They're actually plausible, but if the person doesn't know the content or the outcome well enough, then they're not going to know which one is the correct answer. Keep in mind the module learning outcomes. Ask questions at whichever levels of blooms you want to designate. Where appropriate, include a variety of question types. Format your output in this structure: numbered question, respective A through D response options, letter of correct answer, aligned outcome, bloomed level, brief rationale for correct answer, feedback for respective A through D correct and incorrect responses. Ensure this is output is Canvas ready. So this is a pretty good sized paragraph, and it can take some time to develop something like this. There's a lot of nuance in here, and there's some learning and design principles in here as well. And so there's a lot packed into this, and it can take time to develop the first time around. But if I spent, let's say, 15 minutes on this, and I'm getting an outcome that is that much more rich and effective, this is worth it down the line time and time again, because I'm going to be able to swap out the topic name across my different courses and whenever I might use these quizzes as knowledge checks. So this is something that can be modeled over and over and over again. And so what I'll do is I'll show you the results here that would come out, and you can see why I scripted it the way that I did. And you'll have access to this chat log that I'm showing right now. And so let me scroll back up to the top. There's the prompt that you saw on the slide. I simply put in the topic, cell structure and function. I put in a few learning outcomes here. I put in that these are lower division non-major learners. You might put in other characteristics. I put in a few levels of blooms that I wanted to make sure that were covered, remember, understand, and analyze, because otherwise you might just get remember, and that's not really going to check deeper learning. It's going to format it the way I asked for. So this probably took about 45 to 60 seconds to develop in entirety. And so for each of these, I have the question, the possible responses, and the correct answer noted, the alignment outcome, the Bloom's level, and the rationale. Now, the feedback statements, that's something instructors don't often have time for, to create those feedback statements. And the major LMS have been doing this forever, where they provided that as a feature, but it doesn't often get utilized. But it's really great if you can do that in the moment and provide them feedback why something was correct or why it may not have been correct. And then you allow them to re-answer or go find the answer and move forward. So this is all here, and I'll scroll down to the bottom, and I didn't put this into the prompt, but you can actually have it export as a CSV file, Canvas-friendly format, or other LMS. QTI, which is a quiz test interactive, I believe, file that stands for, where you would actually be able to import this output into your LMS. So very quickly, but not just quick, a lot packed into this that you can use and that your students can learn from. Yes, thanks, Christine. And also a Respondas file. Awesome. Yeah, and some of you know that step better than I do, absolutely, which I love about the chat. You folks can share your experiences taking it to that next step. Okay. Yeah, Alyssa, feedback takes a lot of time, and that's a barrier. That's a real barrier for instructors, and therefore their students aren't getting it sometimes in the moment. Okay, let me jump back. Feel free to share other thoughts about prompts like this. Yes, you'll have access to everything that you're seeing here, and you'll be able to take that prompt. But we're going to show you how we take things even steps further than this. Because what you saw in that prompt, if I can back up, again, that took a lot of time and expertise. I've been doing this for over 2 years and really working deeply with AI and learning how it works and how to best prompt it and make sure that I've got things baked in so that it's doing exactly what I want for myself and for the output and for the outcome of the learners. Not everybody has time for that. And you said in the poll at the beginning that time to learn AI is a barrier for you. And so not everybody is going to get to this level, and that's understandable. But how can there be an assist to get you to the level of this and the output like this? And so we'll be talking about how we're doing that in just a moment here. So what we do from taking people from ideas to outcomes without having to have 2 years of AI expertise deeply embedded is these optimizers that we work with. And so we'll show you some of these now and what they do. So our teaching optimizers, they're tools, templates, and wizards is how I frame them. Templates can be kind of static, but to me, they're more like wizards because there's AI baked in and code baked in that's going to create these dynamic resources very quickly, just sort of like you just saw, but even better and even easier. They're grounded in research-based learning design. So whether you're thinking about backward design, Bloom's, universal design for learning, emphasizing formative and authentic assessments, real-world things, we've got all of that into these respective optimizers. They're context aware, so they're getting to know what your goals are, what your students are like, and helping you develop resources for that. And then save time, don't sacrifice quality always. And then scaffolding the design process. So breaking down complex tasks into smaller steps that you can do quickly and stack up together. And Sarah will talk more about that in just a bit. So let's look at one example briefly. So this optimizer, we call it an assessment idea generator because you know you have an outcome you're helping students to reach, you have a module maybe that they're going through, and you want to have an idea for assessments that you could do. You want more ideas for assessments. Maybe you've done traditional, maybe you've done more summative assessments. you want to shift to doing more formative and varied assessments. So you want ideas for that because maybe you're newer to that and have limited expertise or limited ideas. That's a reality for many of us. So here's an assessment idea generator optimizer. So you land at this optimizer and you've got a brief description or caveat about, we are using AI. By the way, we're using it within our own model. We're using, latest I heard was ChatGPT 4.0 for our API. And then we're getting the results here and it comes back to you in this optimizer template. So I'm going to just show a quick going back and forth. I'm going to have to paste some things here. So you don't have to see me type all of this, but I can just go to the entry box and put in a statement at the beginning. And then I'm going to say online synchronous. So we like to help you out with modality because there are different results based on the modality of your course. So that's put into play. We're going to go with, do summative on this one. And let's go with apply, analyze, and create for the Bloom's levels. And then for preferences, let's go with case study, projects. And let's see what infographic poster might be as an option for my students. And then on to the next screen, and we're almost there already. Let's see, so characteristics of students, let's put in a response there. First, second year, many are non-science majors. Also keep in mind affordability as you're talking about resources and what you're requiring of them to use. And let's see, specific methods or technologies that I might want considered. And then how much time essentially for this to take place for students. So 1.5 to 2 weeks, maybe they're working on this. They're going to complete it asynchronously in groups of 3 to 4. So I can click next, and then here's the output that I can get based on what I shared. And so I've got some ideas here for case study analysis. I've got some ideas for role-playing activity with case application, and I've got ideas for assessment and class problem solving. So if I wanted to, I could do any editing in line here with this simple editor. I'll go to the review stage because I could also regenerate to see what another result might look like. But I'm just going to click review, and this will be a little bit more readable on this screen. And I could still go back and edit by clicking the pencil icon. So this is giving me some ideas, and then what I could do is now I could go on to case study analysis. I could go to our optimizer on creating case studies, and it would then help me develop a very detailed case study based on the context and the goals or outcomes for my students. But this is the idea generator. It's the first step, and then you can take it to the next level to actually develop the output. Okay, so let's go, and I click complete. And celebration, I've now got this new resource. I'll get to implementation guide and rationale on the next one. So let me go back. And I just want to let you know for assessment and feedback, we have many other optimizers. You can glance at the titles briefly here. We have them all linked if you wanted to go and try some of these. I'll talk about that more at the end, but you could always come back into the deck, or you can go right into Curie and we'll give you the link to that later. Okay. So let's look at number 2. This is a newer one, how to plan an engaging guest speaker experience to enrich learning. So having guest speakers is always a great thing to do, but how can you make it the most enriching experience possible for your students? And so there's some planning that can take place in terms of who the guest speaker is, what they'll be talking about, their expertise, students getting to know that ahead of time, students having questions in mind ahead of time, all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and go to that optimizer. And let me go to my copy and paste sheet at the same time. So you've got the same format at the top, and then you've got your prompts here. So let's go with this environmental policy course, let's say. And let's go with the guest speaker. Oops. Now let's go with, and this will be the last one I demonstrate. We'll move on from here. Who is the guest speaker? So I'm going to put in the information about this person. Now, again, we're using our own LLM instance, and so sharing that information is not going to go out anywhere. So always good to think about privacy and security of information and how that's shared or not into these models. Let's see. Okay, sorry, I'm going to get this to you as quickly as possible. And then as far as preparations, could be reading an article, watching a video from this person, perusing their LinkedIn profile to get to know things about them and what they might ask related to their role. And so here you have, again, the draft, and you can click in and you can do any editing or nudging. You can go to the next step and you can see this a bit more visibly. And this is now the actual, you have on the back, let me go back one just to clarify. This is what you can post for your students to prepare them for the experience. And then in our optimizers, we also have these facilitation guides, which helps you to prepare for the day of and even leading up to. Okay, so I'm going to just click review. And again, you're at that last stage. I'm going to say complete. And I'll show you something different. For those campuses where we're actually formally working with them, this can go straight into your LMS. If you wanted to, you could, again, look at the two different outputs that are here. You could share it with a colleague, you're co-teaching with, or they're teaching a different section. Here's that implementation guide. And then again, we have rationale statements for each of our optimizers to show that there's research behind these different techniques and why, when, why, and how they should be used and how they can be effective. So that's just an example here about, again, research being behind a lot of what we're doing. Okay, this one I'm just going to take you to, but not complete. And the reason why I'll show you this one briefly is I like it because, again, authentic learning is always great. But with this one, it has something new that we haven't shown yet. With a lot of our assignments now, we've added this level of AI use. You can designate how much AI you want students to use or not use in the assignment you're developing. And some of you may know this AI assessment scale by Perkins et al. The second iteration came out in 2024, late 2024. So yeah, so this is what we have built in to help you start factoring in AI and putting those parameters in there for your students. And then it will actually put that into the assignment. It'll describe where students can use AI and then how they can document that, and then where they shouldn't be if that's the case. So I'm going to stop there and go back. And again, more on course design and planning and these optimizers that we have. We're probably at about 100 of these optimizers, and these are the interactive dynamic resources we have. We also have a lot of OER resources in our Curie platform. So let's talk about full course scaffolding using Curie for design. So this is what we've been working on more recently, is how can you do it at the full course level or even program level? How can you start lining all of these things up in a streamlined process? So thinking about, again, the term scaffolding, how can you use it to build your structure? It helps you in developing something more creatively and also something that's going to be more lasting. So think about AI helping you by scaffolding. You're still the one in charge of the structure itself and its characteristics. As we go into talking about Curie more and Curie for design, this is something where we've had a design panel involved with us of many folks like you, where we've brought in this expertise from designers and instructors because we want this to be informed by research, but also by users like you. We want expert validity. And so this is not something that we've just developed in-house. We've actually done this with a community. And thinking about the design process, so again, your outcomes, how that drives the assessments that you'll select and create, how then you have those learning activities that are designed to get students to those outcomes and have those be assessed. What are the materials you're selecting? So this backward design process again, that we'll model and talk about as we go into the flow. And I'm going to stop share here and take a breather while Sarah takes us to the next level.
It would be great if I could see where I could share. I just lost my little, sorry guys. Okay, I think you should be looking at my screen.
Got it.
What you're seeing now is our Curie platform. This is my portfolio. We're going to focus on the playlists here, which are each of the courses that I am working on. And I'm going to use Introduction to General Psychology to walk you through not the full design workflow, but just some highlights to show you how we're using AI to elevate course design. So our goal with Curie overall was to apply our structured approach to course design that brings together the different pieces that instructors and designers are already thinking about managing those outcomes, assessments, engagement, and organize them into a clear path. We wanted to provide a structure that's consistent and efficient across either a course or a program. So ultimately, the focus is on content and the design itself and not the logistics. So we're going to start here with the playlist. Our course design workflow is stepped out. As Brett said earlier, we're following basically a backwards design model, which means that we're looking broadly across a course and then getting more and more refined as we go. So we're going to start with a course action plan, which I'm not going to show you, but this is where we input the basic information of the course. Most of it comes from the syllabus. All of this information will be used by AI throughout the rest of the optimizers to help make informed recommendations for you. As you can see up here, I can also add collaborators. So I have all of these people on my course and they can easily see at a glance what I have completed and what I haven't. So, so it's clear what we're doing at every step of the way. I am going to show you our course structure and module learning outcomes, which has come up quite a bit. Our first page is just confirming those course details that we already have. As you can see, the data I'd entered previously is carried all the way through. And then we're going to look at our course outcomes. If my course does not already have course outcomes, I can use this system to generate them, which I have done here. It takes into account the level of the course as well as the information in the course description, all of that good stuff, so that it is giving me verbs that are appropriate for that level. This is an introductory level course. So as you can see, I've got to identify and describe and explain. If I were working on an advanced course or a graduate level course, you'd be seeing more analyze and create. Once we have our course outcomes confirmed, it will ask if I want to have weeks dedicated to a midterm, a final, or a course wrap up. I can say yes. I have 15 modules in this course, so it's easy to do. And then it automatically, again, taking the information from the course action plan, generates my module topics. And I can see that it's also mapped them to my course outcomes, which are writing at the bottom of the page. So I can see at a glance how it has split up the work and how things are going to be applied across the course. If I want to change any of these, I can edit them as I like. I'm going to say that I like all of these. And the next thing it does automatically is to generate module learning outcomes, which, as we discussed earlier, or as Brett discussed earlier, are often a pain point. It will generate them again, keeping in mind that Bloom's level, and it automatically ties it back to those course outcomes. Again, I can edit whatever I want, but this really helps with that blank page syndrome. And, it's always easier to edit than it is to write from scratch. We're going to then I have one last chance to review. We can conduct a review against SMART goals. For time, I'm going to say no, but it would provide me suggestions if I did. And then I complete the optimizer. And we're going to use those results throughout the rest of the course design workflow. So everything will tie back up to our course structure and those module learning outcomes. I'm going to shimmy over to the course assessment plan, skipping ahead a bit. And again, we start with the ability to confirm those details. And then we're really looking at ensuring that we have a balanced and intentional approach to assessment. So we're going to use AI to create that plan while reserving flexibility on format, frequency, and grading. Again, this is to plan across the entire course. Later, when we get to the outline stage, that would be where you would enter or determine, add in all of those activity optimizers that Brett just showed. So first, we're going to look at our summative or high stakes assessments. I can pick the type or I can add a new one. If I opt to scaffold it, the system will break it into manageable tasks across the course so that we can be sure that we're planning in that workload for those long projects or big papers. And it asks if it's going to be graded. Next, we're going to look at our formative or lower stakes assessment types. We want to be sure that we are giving students the ability to practice or fail in a safe place. So we're asking for type, we're looking at the frequency, and then again, if it's graded or not. I changed something, so it's going to regenerate. So based on my selections, the system will generate an assessment plan momentarily. Zoom always makes it slower. And you can see we have our modules, the topics that we've already set. And then module by module, we're looking at what the formative assessments we selected are and what our individual summative assessments are. So as you can see, it's broken out the paper and my project. And here we've had the system make some general considerations and suggestions just to get the ideas flowing for anyone who needs to start thinking about new types of assessment. All of this, again, is editable, so you can really make it your own. It generates an assessment table, which is the same information, just looking at it by assessment type, so that we can look at how the assessments are falling over the module and how they're aligning to those course outcomes. From there, we'll actually complete the grading scheme. So for each of the assessments that I said were graded, it's going to ask me for the final percentage of the grade. And as I am adjusting this, it will adjust my graphic so I can get a really good feel for how those assessments are weighted across the course. The last part is based on the selections that I made. I had selected discussion. We have the system is auto suggesting some of those optimizers that Brett showed for individual activities. If I select these, they will be added to my playlist so that I can go back and work through them. Once we hit complete, we celebrate our success, and we would continue to work through all of the optimizers build on one another to populate the course outline. And that's where we're going to select the optimizers for modules. Once I draft my course outline, it will then put the modules into my playlist with those optimizers within them. So I can just start working through them as I like. And that is it. I know that's a lot.
Okay, microphone on, try that again. Thanks, Sarah. Lots of great activity in the chat. Love it. And I'm going to go back to share and then pause on a couple of the comments that were made here. Let me pick. Got it. Okay, great. Let me move forward and just park us here. Okay. So you definitely saw here what was happening with the workflows, the scaffolding that was taking place to help those things happen efficiently and effectively for the designer, for the instructor. And yes, the designer and instructor can both be working in that space, and that's the desired. And when instructors and designers work together, there's all sorts of great magic that happens when those respective roles come together effectively. But there can be pain points to that. There can be logistical struggles, technical struggles, just a lot of slow points. And so this helps to accelerate things and make it more efficient and more effective within Curie for Design by that taking place. And then you saw how quickly you could get some of those outputs and then be able to just then validate and right size and correct anything and get it the way you wanted. I know there was a comment about, what's left for the designer to do, and that's not what we're proposing here. It's really that the designer is allowed to focus on their specific skills and expertise and make that the main purpose and main focus, not to do a lot of heavy lifting. And so this gets them through the stages of applying that expertise, the high level expertise and knowledge that they have to make enhancements to any of the outputs. And therefore, they're going to be able to then be working with more faculty, let's say, on more courses. So it can accelerate their workflow and elevate their workflow, not eliminate by any means whatsoever. And the same with faculty is AI is not going to replace instructors. It's going to replace certain things that instructors do. And instructors who can use AI to certain extents are going to be more effective and more resilient and are going to be able to lean into the things that they're able to do more effectively with their students in a human to human, a more connected way. So anyway, just a little breakdown on that in response to some of the questions that I saw. And let me pull chat back up so I don't miss anything else as I move us forward, because I know we're getting down toward the end, doing great on time. One last interaction and hearing from you is based on what we've talked about today. What are some things you think about as either hopes or hesitations at this point? So we'll get you into the Padlet. You've got the link in chat. Again, I'll pause here for anybody using the QR code. We'll get in together, see what you've got to say, debrief very quickly because we've got some announcements on some upcoming things and also access to Curie, which I know some of you asked about. If we gave it to you earlier, you may not be tracking the presentation and really learning how to use it, in a quicker way from us. Okay, so I'm going to go to the Padlet briefly. And again, this will be brief, and some of you had shared earlier, but I wanted to get your thoughts now that we've had this conversation, now that you've seen some of these demonstrations, excuse me. Saw rubrics come up a couple times. It's tricky to get it to do rubrics well, but once you know how to do that, it is powerful. And we have an optimizer, of course, for that has the prompting, like you saw earlier, baked in very specifically to where it does these things at a very high level to the standard of our national, rubric evaluator standards. Okay, partnering with assessments and activities, helping students learn more effectively. Yes, absolutely. Idea generation. I'm seeing lots of hopes. That's great. Oh, this is improving one part. I didn't put in the hesitation part. Excuse me. Awesome. Lots of great ideas. And again, for time purposes, I'm going to go back and talk about what's next, because we're always thinking next steps and pushing things forward. And we like to also make that available and share out. So exploring, experimenting, and reflecting on how this can work for you. So to explore Curie, we've got the link going into the chat for you. You can try some of the teaching optimizers. Again, the optimizers are the ones that are interactive, where you're putting in information and you're getting these resources built for you. You also have access to other information that's open access resources that are more static. So you've got that information. If you want to have a hands-on virtual office hour for Curie for Design, like Sarah demonstrated, then she's offering a couple office hours and you can sign up here. And so we'll get you those links as well. So we tried to offer 2 dates in the near future while this is on your mind. And since it's summer, you may have more time, you might be more flexible, but we hope that you'll have an opportunity there. So sign up for that. And then let me go on to the next thing. We have more webinars coming up. So we're going to do one on June 4th. I mentioned that early on today, Universal Design for Learning. How can you use AI to help advance any UDL practices? And that is making sure that the greatest number and diversity of students can be successful through the principles of UDL, which I won't talk about now, obviously, but that's an opportunity. I'm excited to have Sandy Ayala from Sonoma State University joining me for that. And then one after that, on June 25th, course program design at scale. So how can a platform approach like this using AI very intentionally help to take your course and program design to scale, again, while maintaining quality and all those critical elements. So we'll get the follow-up link to you based on your attendance here today, so don't worry. And we did have the link in there, but since I already had the deck open, we'll get it to you. And then we also are offering an AI literacy micro-credential. This is an asynchronous online course that you can take. It involves 4 one-hour modules. And so if you're interested in that, we have a small pilot running currently. We're going to do a second wave of a pilot here in the near future, starting in June. So over summer, you would be able to complete that and receive your micro-credential in AI literacy. So feel free, we'll give you the link there. Yes, you have that in the chat. And we'll stop. And thank you, everyone, for your participation, your questions and contributions. And thank you, Sarah, for your role and the rest of the Alchemy team.